Good evening, everyone. Welcome. What a fabulous crowd. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Melissa Lampe, and I'm the president of the Watertown Historical Society. And we are so incredibly pleased to be hosting this special event tonight with our guest speaker, Bill Mullen. Everyone here knows Bill, I am sure. Yes. Let's give him a round of applause. So while I have a captive audience, I just want to share a couple of things regarding the Historical Society special events that are coming up. Of course, tonight we're here for this wonderful presentation. On Monday, June 16th, we are planning to have our first Music at the Museum. It will be the Gary Beal Band. They're coming from Madison. They do a little bit of polka, a little bit of Patsy Cline, all kinds of classic hits. It's 5 artists. They've been together for years. I think you'll really enjoy it. One thing you might note, if you've come to our events in the past, we're probably doing this one on the front lawn of the Octagon House because our backyard is still under construction. So just make note of that. Some people like that, I hear. I'm hearing wonderful out in the audience. And then because our backyard remains under construction, our planned June 22nd ribbon cutting for our new first kindergarten edition might get pushed back. We're gonna have all kinds of fresh seed down and we just can't have people walking on it. So watch the Daily Times, watch our Facebook page, and we will let people know if that event is being postponed. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Bill.
Thank you, Melissa. Before we even started, I've just been so pleased. There's some people who showed up that I haven't seen in a long time. One is my nephew, Kevin. It's such a delight to reconnect with him. And my daughter, Tiffany, is here as well. And her 2 daughters, my granddaughters, lovely sweethearts, smartest kids in the world, and good looking too. Yes. So yeah, it's delightful to see all these wonderful faces. It's part of the Watertown history as well as Mullen's ice cream, Mullen's Dairy. So I'm so glad Melissa gave me this opportunity to talk about this because it's really attracted a lot of interest. I can see as we are filling up the room. So again, thank you so much, Melissa, and for inviting me to do this, and thank you so much for coming to hear this speech. I want to be sure to mention I'm not a professional speaker, so don't judge me by that, but I was really looking forward to talking about this wonderful subject because it's dear to my heart. I'm the 6th generation of Mullens in Watertown. My daughter is the 7th. Now, even though my granddaughters aren't from Watertown, we're going to count it anyway. They're never. It's quite a long time. My ancestor, Mary Mullen, came from Foxford, County Mayo in Ireland in 1842. Her husband was tragically died in an accident, fell off a barn, I think it was. He was helping a neighbor raise the barn, and he fell off and was killed. So she was a widow with 7 kids. And she immigrated to the United States in 1842. She was encouraged to come by her sister who lived in Albany, New York. And so she came. She didn't come with all her kids. Some of them were older, they stayed back, but they all eventually did come to the United States. It wasn't too long after that, she bought 140 acres of land on the Horseshoe Road. And I don't know if everybody knows where the Horseshoe Road is, but it's where they settled from Ireland, and that's where eventually the first Mullen's Dairy was. So let me start. This is a little bit of a head start on my subject, but I want to point out these are my grandfather and grandmother Mullen in the middle, and Grandpa was the one that actually started the dairy on the farm on Horseshoe Road. Wasn't called Horseshoe Road at that time, but that's where they settled, and that's where they had the dairy in the beginning. And Frank is to his left, and my father Webb is this gentleman here on the end. And they were the oldest, and so they actually, took Grandpa's business and started it. And then Jerry, who is to Grandpa's right, he's sitting next to Grandma Mullen. He came in a couple years later. He was younger, hadn't got out of high school. And then the baby, Ben, is at the very end, and he chose a different path. He was a career military person, and he ended up in Madison working for various state departments and what have you. And he was educated, so he didn't become part of the business. And I don't mean that in that way, but you could still be educated and be in the business. I was, so that's the picture. So this is the sign that was on the side of the dairy on the farm. For the life of me, I don't know how we were able to save it, but somehow we were. So that's, and I don't know if you can see on the bottom, but somehow or another when I took the picture, there's a ruler at the bottom, and we gave out those rulers every year for all the kids that are coming to school. So Mary Mullen was able to buy this land out on Horseshoe Road, 140 acres. She paid $125 for the 40 acres. And one of her sons bought some adjoining land, and eventually she got a few acres of that. But the government at the time was encouraging people to move west from the east. And remember, I said she was staying with her sister in Albany, New York, so she moved out here. I also think she was probably attracted by the number of Irish people that were coming this way too. So she built a log cabin out on Horseshoe Road, and I just read where most of this territory was all woods. And one side of the river was one type of wood, I think it was maple, and one side was all oak. And I mention that because I can't imagine back in the mid-1800s that you find this land and you got to clear not only land to build a house, but you also have to clear it to grow some crops. And of course they didn't chop down all 100 acres where it is probably 2 acres here, 2 acres there, and they kept growing and so forth. But I think back about that and I go, man, there was no chainsaws, there was an axe and a saw, and they probably hooked up the log to a horse or something to haul it away, but and then you used the wood, I imagine, to build a cabin. They did build it, when they first came, they built a house or a cabin, and it burnt down, and then they built another one and it burnt down. So, and then it also interesting, when they finally built a permanent kind of home, which the foundation is still there, but there's a different house on it now. It also burned down in 1947 and 48, and I remember it because I was just a little guy, and Mom came in and said, Dad and I are going out to the farm because the house is on fire. And so the hired man, Bob Wilkie and Florence, they were living there. And the house did burn down. They weren't able to occupy it. So they rebuilt it on top of the foundation. They were able to save that. And I recall that Florence and Bob and their son Roger, they converted the garage into a house, a temporary house, to get them through till the house was built. So all those good memories. So Mary Mullen, when she came to the United States, she would be my grandfather's, as I pointed out. He was my grandfather's grandmother. So she would be my great-grandmother. And of course, Frank Mullen Sr. was the father of my dad, Webb. And we saw the picture on that. So moving ahead to the dairy was first located on the family farm. I showed you the picture of the sign, and they shipped their milk to a company in town called Chocola dairy drink. Chocola, I forgot all about that, but I came across it as I was researching, and I don't remember it at all. I think it was way before my time, but they were closed down. They were at the end of South 1st Street in Milwaukee, which is now occupied by a lot of the municipal property of excavators and what have you. Am I okay with this microphone, or am I driving you nuts? And this little chocola was closed down for sanitary reasons. And so here was Grandpa with this milk. 2 sons that were old enough to run a business. So they started it on a little building that's, I'm over here, is right next to that building there is where there was a little wooden building. That's where they started. And they washed the bottles. I'm not sure how they transported from the farm now, obviously in some cans of some kind, probably 10-gallon cans. And they washed the bottles by hand. They filled them by hand and they capped it. And then they took a horse and buggy and they delivered the milk. The horses were housed behind this barn. There was a stable back there, and that's where he kept the horses. So there's a little story that I saved over the years, and it's called Cupid Rides the Milk Wagon. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but Jay Keatman, who wrote a book about Watertown, the hometown love story, sent this to us many years ago. Jay is a 43 graduate of Watertown High School, semi-retired physician. He's written about 20 chapters, and he talks about Watertown. Every time he visits, there's another story or a very special character that pops up. But this one in particular is really close to home, and I wanted to share it with you because I think it's just really cool. He said, it's been a while since we last published a chapter from him, and it's long overdue. So here's the one called Cupid Rides the Milk Wagon. It will bring back memories for many longtime residents of Watertown. So here it goes. Clippity-clop, clippity-clop, the long silent sound of the horse-drawn milk wagon still lives in memory of yesterday, Watertown, Mullen's Dairy. Used horses to power in the early 30s, and the sound of horses' hooves always elicited a feeling of excitement. A welcome sound in early spring and summer mornings. In the words of the great yogi, this was nostalgia all over again. Waiting with barely contained excitement each morning at 5:30 was Ralphie Gabler, a regular milk wagon hitchhiker. He is the great-grandson of the founder and longtime owner of the Watertown Table Slide Company, a firm still revered worldwide. When the wagon stopped in his house at the corner of 6th and Clyman Street, Ralphie was out the door and into the cab of the wonderful wagon and up on the lap of Frank Boone Mullen, eldest of the brothers, owners of the dairy. The horse knew the route and would follow along as Moon delivered to each house. He was ready for Moon when he returned to refill his milk bottle basket. The sound of the clinking bottles added to the mystique of the early morning. Ralphie knew that Moon was sweet on our third-grade teacher, Helen Graham, occasionally referred to us as Mrs. Graham Cracker. She was an elementary teacher at Webster School in the depths of the Depression. Moon would give Ralphie messages to take to Miss Graham. His sense of humor surfaced when he told Ralphie to ask teacher if she was from the North Pole, because she was Polish. Miss Graham said, no, I'm Irish. Of course, that was a good answer. Which routine was a day ritual enjoyed by Moon, Ralphie, and the horse. Thus, the milk wagon Cupid worked his magic to this day. He is convinced that his arrows hit their mark, and that he was the main courier of the Dickinsonian
Barker's is moving message, but which resulted in the marriage of Moon and Helen Brown. So it really is a true story, and I don't know if anybody here can remember. And Helen, she worked in the store, and like everybody in the family worked in the store in the early years, whether it was bookkeeping, whether it was working the counter or whatever it was. It was a family affair. So she was the delight. Where I probably can't say that about Uncle Frank. He was sort of a grouchy guy and didn't like us kids very well. But all in all, he still would have gone. So the building to 40 feet west of the current area is where they started. As I mentioned, the horses were housed behind in the barn. They soon outgrew this little spot here, and they moved over to the present building at 212 West Main Street. And let me see if I should get my picture here. This here is the first retail part of that building. And as you look over there, it's right where it is, the front. Didn't go very, as you can see by the spools, it's not very deep. And that's Uncle Frank and a longtime employee, Blanche Habacorn. She was the bookkeeper. She spent her whole life working for Mullins, as did her husband, Ed. He worked in the bottling plant. But I don't actually remember this particular store. I think I was way too young. But that was the beginning. Now the milk was processed right behind this. Again, it was in this original building. So we had the store, and then we had the dairy, and of course it was in the beginning. So there was a lot of old technology. As I mentioned earlier, they filled bottles by hand and so forth. But they had the cooler, and a lot of the cooling was done with ice at that time. But as time went on, it not only did the trucks get more modern, but a lot of the coolers and so forth did as well. After they made the addition, well, I'm going to backtrack here just a little bit. They introduced ice cream in 1940. And I have a picture of where those the bottles in a milk box. And all the customers had a milk box. And of course it started out with the only quarts were at the time, but as it got different, it got the half gallons and gallons and half pints and pints and what have you. So the sizable addition was added, and in 48. So obviously you put two and two together. There was a lot of soldiers home after the war, and there was demand for the product, not only from us but from other places. At one time, there was over 22 little dairies in Watertown when we started, and it was very similar. They practiced the same way, and they probably originally used horse and buggy as well. In regards to that, I remember, I have read someplace where one by one, Mullins would buy a particular dairy, and what I mean by that was they didn't buy any equipment, they didn't buy any, they bought their customers. So they built up a customer base by buying another dairy. So that's how they were able to grow as well. So when they made the expansion in 48, received their milk in 10-gallon cans from the farmers, and the milk was pasteurized in tanks that had water jackets around it, and it was heated to 160 degrees, then cooled by a large tank that was in the basement that was called an ice bank. And so you had to heat the milk up to 160 degrees to pasteurize the kill of germs that were maybe in there. And then of course then you had to cool it right away so you could put it in the bottles. So this is the first technology. The bottles, there was a bottling room which was the first room behind the old building. And the bottles would be put in there, they would go through this solution that would clean them, and then they would rinse them, and then they would go on a conveyor, go through a wall to the next room, which held the fillers. And the bottle would be on a conveyor, and the milk was put into the bottles. It was filled, capped, and put into the cooler, ready for delivery the next morning. At this time, Kenny Plotz, I don't know if you might remember the name. He was a milk hauler at the time, and he would stop at each farm and hoist these 10-gallon cans onto his truck, and I can still see it to this day. It's hard work. It was heavy, but he did it. He had a nickname called Pokey. I don't know if you remember that, but he was just a slow-going guy, easy-going, happy guy, and he would help at the dairy, especially if we needed, somebody was on vacation or what have you. And he would come in after he picked up the milk and help us clean up, because we had to clean up and get ready for the next day. And I was just a young kid at the time, and I said to him, "Well, why are you in such a hurry all the time?" And he said, "Well, Billy, if you do it right the first time, you don't have to do it again." I see that big old smile, And some of you remember he also had a polka band. And he played, I bet you he played every weekend someplace. Oompa Oompa, that was Pokey. Some of the other names of the workers in the dairies were there for many, many years. Ed Haberkorn, Fritz Klecker, George McFarland, my brother Jake, and there was a couple off and on, Langs and some others that were maybe not there but a couple of years, but they were part of the history. So after World War II, which sparked this big increase, raw sales and store traffic due to the returning soldiers, we bought more trucks to service the routes, both retail and wholesale. And at this time, I remember we bought four Diffco trucks from Arnold Schmidt Company, and they originally had ice. Let me see if I can find a picture. Okay, so this is a picture of a Diffco truck, and the one on the left looks like it's the newest, but it's not, because I can look at the telephone number, it says 1566. So that was probably a 1949 Diffco, which we bought new, or I should say my dad and uncle, they bought new, and they ran them for 20 years. And Uncle Jerry was the mechanic. I'll probably touch on this a little bit. But I can remember as a little kid, they would bring that truck in, and one of them was limping. Generally, it was the motor was bad or something like that, and he always had a fresh, rebuilt motor sitting on a wooden thing, and he would stay up all night and put that motor in that little truck all by himself. And by the time the Roman got there at 5 in the morning, it was ready to go. Then that truck, that engine that he took out, he took to Miller Auto Parts, and they rebuilt it, had it ready for the next one. This picture here is it got a 2614278. That was the number after 1566 that they had. So that's Pinky Harold, and I'll talk about him a little bit. He's a very wonderful, famous man, and we were so happy that he was part of our history. So those are the Diffco trucks. After 20 years, when they needed to be replaced, they bought refrigerated trucks, so they didn't have to do the ice. That was huge. And what I mean by that is that the routeman could come in after they delivered for that day. He could load the milk up onto that truck, and he was ready to roll in the morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. So he didn't have to, load the truck, put the ice in, and go out for his route. So That was a big improvement. That was a big improvement. So some of the routemen that I could remember was not only Pinky, but a man by the name of Bill Renicky, Louis Doubleday, Harold Kreisman, George Schubert, and Earl Lehman. One of the fun memories I have was Bill Renicky was the routeman we lived on Church Street, North Church Street, and he would come by and I'd be out there looking for him, and then I would hop on his truck and we would go down towards Lincoln Park, and there was a Bowden's grocery store there. He would service that, and there was Quonset huts there, and those were the housing for some of the soldiers that came in some housing right after the war. So they temporarily stayed there. So we would go in the Quonset huts, and then he would turn around and come drop me off at the house. I just looked forward to it. I was just a little guy. And so Bill was a good memory and a wonderful man. Some of the stores that we serviced at the time were Benson's, and Iflin's, and Fence, and Williams, Bacher's, and then the big supermarket called Streggy's. That was the beginning of the end. You know. Watertown factories also were supplied with milk for their lunch breaks, such as the Mid-Stage Shoes, Kuzel Dairy Equipment, Motor Transport, the Box Factory, Owens Glove Lining, and some schools such as Northwestern Prep School and College, Sacred Heart Academy, which is now there in Alpha, and some city schools were added to the routes. But when with the advent of the supermarkets, which was probably around the 70s and 80s, and filling stations were offering lower milk prices as price leaders, and fewer people were at home to receive the milk, which you saw was in the milk box, there was a decline started from home and retail deliveries, until there were only two men left. One was a young Jim Hurdle, and then there was Pinky Harold, who went to war, World War II, came back, and worked at Mullen's for 37 years. And you can see his mural on the side of the building over here, honoring him. He was quite a hero in the war, by the way. My dad, Webb, died suddenly in '73, leaving Jerry and Frank to run the business. Dad, I always said, was sort of the main cop. Each had their responsibilities, but he pretty much took care of the operation per se, so he was really missed. Not only did he make the ice cream, but he worked in the store. Jerry was a mechanic, as I mentioned, and Frank mainly worked in the store. So Dad was really a missing link in that operation. So in 1976, Carl and I saw an opportunity and reached out to them to buy the business. This is the article that was in the paper. It was really wonderful that we were able to keep it in the family. Carl and I never really thought we would be back to Watertown, but as life goes on and opportunities come up and so forth, you grabbed it, and this was just a wonderful opportunity, and we made the right choice. So the article says the dairy is kept on the farm, and it goes on to talk about how things have changed. And there's one thing, the 2.5 gallon middle container, which I'll have a picture of that. It was for big ice cream eaters, and it says maintain $5.30 for vanilla and $5.80 for flavor ice cream. And I don't think you can get a pint for that now, but I'm not sure. But having said that, they were positively paying you know, the guys were probably getting maybe, I don't know, $5,000, $4,000 a year. So things have changed in that respect. So we came back, and the offer that we made was accepted, and Uncle Jerry sent the acceptance in a Christmas card. I thought that was sort of cute. We moved back to Watertown after being away for 16 years, and we knew there was going to be many changes. We just didn't know when, but we were not blind by this. We could see that things were coming to change. My father would have encouraged all the employees back in, I don't know what year it was, to join the Teamsters Union. Which was really unique because usually management and Teamsters didn't see eye to eye, but he could see not only was it good for the employees because they fed into the retirement program, we, Mullins, fed into the retirement program. So when they retired with Social Security, it was a wonderful, wonderful retirement. In '79, we closed the bottling and delivery parts of the business and became a Golden Guernsey distributor. All of our wonderful productive farmers were able to transfer their milk to Golden Guernsey Waukesha plant, which was not only good for the farmers because they were excellent, dedicated, loyal farmers to us, but they were really, really good dairy farmers. They were so good, and I mean this sincerely, that you wouldn't have had to pasteurize their milk, it was that clean. But we did it anyway because we were required by law. Some of the names were Lloyd Holterman, Schraders, the Gutenkaufs, Richters, Melkers, and over time there were some that came and gone, but those were the basic ones that stuck with us all those years. And one story that I wanted to share with you was about Lloyd Holterman, who really, really ran a tight farm, and he was so particular. He was just a good farmer. So they had to be inspected at least once or twice a year, whether, just by law. So the story goes that there was a young inspector, and he was not concerned about anything in history, what have you, but he rolled up the Holtermans because they found a spider web on the milk house door. And Lloyd was so damn mad because it meant nothing. He said there was just a mark against him, and he was so angry about that. I can never forget that. So, another valued employee for many years was George McFarland, who came on board with us after my dad died. You'll remember the name that McFarland's had a little dairy on their farm, and they also closed up as well. So George was familiar with the business. He tried his hand to work in one of the factories, and he didn't like it. So when I offered him the job, he was so tickled, and we were as well. He not only helped us in the dairy, but he also made the ice cream, and he was really good at it. When we became a distributor for Golden Guernsey, we bought a large refrigerated truck. So George would, when he wasn't making ice cream, he would take the truck to Waukesha, pick up the milk at Golden Guernsey, and he'd come back, drop off at some of the supermarkets, some of which were maybe customers of Golden Guernsey, but we were a distributor at that point. And then we would put the milk in our cooler and use it for our operation or whatever. Shortly after, we decided to discontinue selling milk products, and I knew that this was in the future as well. So we didn't sell dairy products out of the store, and we decided to to expand into soup and sandwich menu. We needed to build up traffic in the store because of, not only in the summer, but we had, how are we going to get through the winter? You know, we had selling milk for years and maybe some cheese and pot roast potato chips or whatever. And so we had to come up with something, so I decided to do the soup and sandwich. And we put in some booths to complement our counter and the fabulous swirling red stools, which are basically still there, I think. Also, we were using a multi-mixer, which was sold and serviced by Ray Kroc, who eventually became the founder of McDonald's. And we actually have a letter, a copy of a letter, and I think there's one framed in the store as well. But this was dated May 10th, 1945. And of course, he was a sales representative for the multi-mixer. And so we bought one from him, and whoever knew that he would be a famous man, he was in our store. Mullins for many years employed high school kids and ladies in our store. Some stayed on through high school, college, and beyond. I am so grateful for the many high school kids and women that have worked for us over the years. I wish we had kept track of all the teenagers that worked at Mullins, and there was many over those years. That was basically their first job, and they have told me it was a wonderful experience. It was a great part of Mullins' history. And fortunately, my good, wonderful employee, Donna Klum, came tonight, and we're so happy that she was a delightful, loyal, hard-working woman. We're so grateful to you and many others, Donna. So thank you. Yeah. In 1997, we sold Mullins to Ron and Gloria Lipke. Yeah. So there's a Watertown tradition in the heart of Dairyland, Mullins Dairy Bar. It's got a very good picture of Ron and Gloria, but they were the new owners. Did a great job. Made some improvements. Ran it for about 10 years, and they sold the business to Troy Milbroth in 2005. Milbroth filed bankruptcy in 2010 and closed his store in September of 2016. He wasn't qualified to do this. I don't mean demean him as a human being, but he was way in over his head. And it's, one of the darker sides of our history, but we survived. It was the dairy, the name was tied up in a legal battle for a number of years, but it was finally settled in 2016. One of the delightful memories of that period was Carl and I received countless letters or cards or phone calls and comments from members of the community expressing how sad they were about the closure. It felt so sad for us. And I often said to them, we were deeply touched. We were more sad for the community than for us. I'll never forget that. That was as I mentioned, Ron and Gloria maintained the ownership of the building, the name, and they were eventually able to sell this to the Keepman brothers, Matt, Josh, and Adam. And I saw that Adam was here. There he is. We couldn't have been luckier for the transition because these guys are awesome. They're young, they're energetic, they're good business people, they're good citizens. And right away they stepped in and remodeled, keeping an eye on the traditional look of the store. And if you haven't been in there, you're missing something. of interest is the people from the community sort of saw this and contributed artifacts that they might want to use in their store. Thought this was sort of cool. They have expanded quite substantially, and rumor has it they're going to continue. They've got a location as a walk-up ice cream service, one on the Conowalk Fowler Lake. And I would encourage you, on a nice day, it's worth the drive to go there. And they have these wonderful tables on the lake, on Fowler Lake. And if that isn't right out of a movie, I don't know what is. But it's just a wonderful location. They also have an operation in the Smiley Barn in Dummerfield. And you might have seen that when you're on the highway. Picture. I get to talk to. There you are. So we got Josh, Matt, and Adam. And interesting, Josh lives in our old house on Washington Street. He didn't know it when he bought it. So I think it was meant to be. And Adam lives out close to where the farm was in that part of the city, the west side of town. So, yeah. This is how the Cubans are packaging it. And I happened to see something, I don't think I've got a picture of it, but they, I want to tell this picture. They put those pints or quarts in boxes, right? And that's how they're able to transport it. And then Sendix would say, "I'll take whatever," and they would have 5 or 10 or whatever boxes of ice cream and wheel it into their freezer. And that's how they were able to develop that business. So I want to come back to this one. This is sort of a kid story. That's the Watertown historical. That's the West Side Lunch, which is to the west, and for many, many years. And there was an alley between the two. And I could probably barely see there was a mural on the wall. One says Coca-Cola. I don't know what the top one is. But there's also, in our area, there's a door. And there was an apartment up there. And I don't remember anybody living there when I came around, but when they remodeled the front, they changed the door opening to face that way, and they bricked it up. But there's upstairs in the dairy, there was, in the front, and there was the office. That's where Blanche and whoever else, so they would do the bookwork. When the routemen came in, they would go upstairs and they would check in and get that all set before they went home. And then at the end of the month, they had to make out the bills, and that's when my mother, Aunt Helen, Aunt Margaret, Blanche, and whoever else they could get would make out, go through the paperwork and make out the bills so that the routeman could deliver it to the customer. I've been told that at one point there was a funeral home in the back of the original building. I thought that was sort of interesting. I don't know how that. I kept looking for some. Let's see that. Oh, this one here. This is the Centennial parade in downtown Watertown. And the reason I asked Melissa to say that because well, you see the horseshoe that's all made of flowers and so forth. And not only does it show Mullen's Dairy Bar, but if you look in the upper top of that horseshoe, that's me standing on the roof of West Side Lunch. Having a wonderful scene. Oh, I said I gotta show you that one. So. This is all the West Side Lunch. So I think that's all. I had some pictures at the end. See how this. This one here is a gay philosopher that we also every first, not only we give rulers when school started, but we gave out these calendars every year. Always the gay philosopher, and you had a different picture. And we were able to save this one. That was 1960. August, I said August of 1960. And they're treasure. Treasure. Beanie Boys, the bottom. I think that's it. So, to sum this up, I'm really excited about the future of Mullins. And I say that with all sincerity because the Keatmans have great plans. They not only are trying to improve the product, and by the way, I think their ice cream is sincere. I've never tasted better ice cream than what they're making now. They're using the same machine, 10-gallon batch machine, and they've improved it by now trying to eliminate any artificial colors or make it a really good quality product. And I think they're very smart in going to that direction because that separates them from the rest of the business. But if you haven't tried it, I urge you to try to buy this this product. It's so good, and it's not the cheapest on the shelf. But there's a reason for that because they're putting good things in it. And that which reminded me, somebody said, when you put good things in, you get good things out. You know, that was probably Kenny Platt. So I'm really excited about the future, and I mean that sincerely. And they're young, and I hope they go another 50 years or so before they retire. I won't be here to see it, but I'm really optimistic, I guess. I'm really optimistic. So I think that will conclude. If anybody's got any comments or I mentioned Donna, she was an employee. Was anybody else associated any years ago?
My dad was an Elk Brand, George Schubert.
Oh, sure, George Schubert, yes, thank you.
I was a teenage employee.
That's right. My daughter Tiffany was a teenage, and I was gonna tease her and say that she's in the Scoopers Hall of Fame. She was a good, I don't say that because she's my daughter, but she was really a good worker. No. Anybody else?
Yeah, Mullen was my first job in high school 5 years ago.
Oh, yes, so you're one of the scoopers. Yeah, there was so many. I mean, I can remember, in the 50s, mid-50s, some of the guys that worked there was people prior to that, I always wish I had kept track of that. Wouldn't it be fun if we had all those names, all those contacts, We just didn't think of it at the time, so. Yes.
My husband, Jay Dietrich, had worked as a scorer in Owendup
Were they
mid
good?
times on Sunday mornings.
Were they good, the Dietrichs? Oh, man, they stuck with me for a few years after high school, too. The Dietrich girls, Jay was, and they were super. Thank you for saying that. Anybody else?
I worked there when I was in grad school. I worked with Susie and Donna,
Uh-huh.
Dee.
Okay, yes. Well, you saw the cream of the crop. They were good. You can't run a business like that without good people. And I only think that in all the years that I had it, I only let one person go and it broke my heart. Because I tried to get her to come around and so forth, but it just didn't work. And I think I felt worse than she did. Yeah.
She brought me a plant the next day.
Oh, that's right. Carla reminded me she brought me a plant. And go figure. Okay. So I'll turn it back over to
Oh, I think Melissa, oh, boy, yes.
Yep, no, question.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I saw a picture of a Watertown daily pipes in that building.
Yes.
Originally. Close the building, most its original business in there, you know.
in the Daily Times building?
Oh, and that format's going.
Well, that's quite an old building. You know, I looked at some of the pictures Melissa had of the early years, and that building was there.
Carl was, hey.
Yeah.
It's no quiz.
Northwestern College, okay, yeah. Yeah, so, if you get outside, if you were to look on the side of the building, you'll see the old brick, and then you'll see the painted blocks that was a 1948 expansion. And then they added, this, as you look straight across there, that big garage door, that section was built so that when they went from 10-gallon cans to bulk milk, Kenny Platts had to, buy with a tank truck, and he would go out and pump the milk from the farmer's tank into there. Then law required that he had to go in that building, close the door, and then he would pump it into a tank which full of what we would call raw milk, which means it's not pasteurized. But it's always sort of interesting. The floor was tile as well. And so he would pull in there, close the door, pump milk in there, and then we had the device to clean out the truck. So that wasn't there originally, the herbal oak coffin. That was new. And then we also had, to the right of the garage door, which is in the dairy processing plant, there was a great big tank, huge vertical tank. And that's where the raw milk went in, and then you pumped it out of there. I'll share another little story. So when we closed everything down, I was able to sell that big tank. And here comes old Uncle Jerry. He's got it figured out. And he took that tank, he knocked a hole in the wall going into the garage. He backed in some kind of a big equipment wagon. He took that big tank, and I'm talking, it was as high as this. No. By himself, took a chain and all this kind of stuff, worked it over, put it on the wagon and away, but by himself. He was just, in later years, he would have been a hell of an engineer. I mean, he was so mechanical, so smart, Another little side story. Anybody else?
What's that chalk coal you're talking about you produced in Richmond?
Well, we didn't produce it. It was in that building that was burnt down, and where Grandpa was selling his milk to. Okay? So when their doors were closed because of sanitary reasons, here we are, So,
What did they come in now?
well, they use it to make their product. Yeah, there's a milk product of some kind.
Jerry has ever tried a soft serve ice cream?
No, let me clarify that. There is no such thing as soft serve ice cream. And then another thing, making fun of it. Soft serve is a dairy product that is less than 10% butterfat. So it's probably, I don't know what it would be. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not condemning it, but it's different. We were 12%, 13% butterfat. So we were a premium ice cream, wasn't it? It was called a premium ice cream. You can tell the difference. Now the keepers have moved on one step further. I think they're super premium. And the other little secret to making good ice cream is your overrun. In other words, if you put in 10 gallons of ice cream mix, which is, got to have quality there as well, you could pump air into it and get, 15, 20 gallons of ice cream, but it's going to be light. You're going to taste it. You're going to notice it. So the less overrun you have, the harder it is, the thicker the texture is just wonderful. So then if you get into custard, which is good too, like Culver's,
It's probably, I'm not exactly sure, you know, I visited with Craig Culver not too long ago. It's probably 10%, but it has a lot of egg in it. And that's the key to the difference between soft serve and custard. So,
Well, where did the color red come from?
oh, where did it come from? You know, that's a good question. Hell, I never had that answer. I'm gonna try to remember that. Yeah. Yeah, it is. I was really surprised in that early side. It was who did it, and you know, it sort of stuck with us forever. Yeah. Yes.
What was the current sign?
The current sign? Oh, that's let's see here. I'll take a wild guess. It's not the original. It's, you know, I had it rebuilt. I would say it's got to be in the early 50s at least. Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, Carlo? Yeah. Well, that was a tall ladder trying to put in the light bulbs. Real well. Anyway, what you'll do?
You know, when I worked at the warehouse for Aldi's, Pick and Say, their ice cream freezer was 40 degrees below zero. Why is it?
It's a little excessive. 20 degrees is rock hard, and that preserves the date. You know, it doesn't get old. You could keep it forever. Yeah. We had in our freezer we had a 20 drawer with huge fans. You know.
Keeping that for you.
Yeah. And you want to get that new ice cream in there, get it hard as quick as possible. And it's good to go for a long time. Yeah. Yes.
Where did Frank get the nickname Moon from?
Well, you know, he was a great athlete, first of all, and I think, as the story goes, remember the cartoon Moon Mullins? Goes back in those days. And somehow or another, somebody picked it up and says, Moon. I'll share with you a nickname that I got in college from a teammate of mine, and it stuck with me until I got out, and thank God they called me Baby Huey. So, for many years after, not so much anymore, I don't think there's too many people who remember it, but, hey Huey, how you doing?
We all know it now, though.
Yeah.
How long did the farm on Horseshoe Road stay in the family?
In 1974, there was an auction. Bob Wilkie was a partner with my grandfather. He had a son named Roger, and Roger was not interested in it. We had nobody interested in it. So they had an auction out there and sold all the equipment. And a family from Illinois, I can't recall the name, came in and bought it, and they ran it for a number of years and then sold it. So. Pardon me? Oh, yeah. Did I mention that? The bypass runs right through the middle of the farm. So I saw Phyllis Hurl. Her ancestors lived in a farm to the on Gypsy Road, the first farm to the west, yeah. And so we had a trail right from the farm, right from the barn to the end of all the fields. That's how they got the equipment out there to work it. And I go back. I just love to share this story with you because one of the benefits of getting older, you have such memories, such history. I was just a little boy, and went out to the farm with my dad, and Grandpa was cutting hay, and I got to ride on. It just seemed like that hay, the hay wagon was so high, the front of it was, and crawl up there And he'd help me, and I'd sit on his lap, and he'd put his arms around me. He had the reins to the horses. And he said, Billy, you take those reins. No, you drive those horses here. Can you imagine? I mean, you know, such wonderful memories. Yeah. Yes.
You've done such a really nice job sharing the history. I would love it if your materials became a booklet for the Historical Society to sell. I would send them to my brothers and my cousins who no longer in the area. I would love to hear all this. I know it's more work for you, I'm sorry.
Well, I'll get back to you.
We have a video recording tonight to start. So when that's available, the city is helping us with that. So when that tape is available, we'll post it to the Watertown Historical Society Facebook page, and then it can get shared and viewed by everyone.
Okay, one other little tip, or one other little fact. I am the president of Melissa Lampy's fan club.
Don't try to avoid your answers.
So we would like to give Adam Heatman a chance to be formally introduced to all of you, and then wants to talk a little bit about Mullins today. So we'll give.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. What an honor it is to follow Bill and the presentation and the years that 8 years we've been involved there as a family with the business. It's always great to see Bill and Carla, and there's never a shortage of stories to share. I'm the unique individual that shares a lot in common with Bill over there. You know, there's so many great families, so many great kids that come through. It does continue to be a family business. We have 2 different groups of mothers and daughters helping out around there. And like Bill said, the helpers, the staff are what makes it all possible. So we're very thankful to all of them. It's storybook for me when I think about it. You know, Bill's up here reading the entry from my great uncle Jay, who wrote that piece that you read about the horses. And like Bill said, my brother lives in his little house, and I live out by the farm. I mean, you can't even make that stuff up, right? So I'm just really blessed and grateful and thankful for the experience of being a part of the community and sharing the tradition and always having the support and the goodwill from the Mullins family when they come to visit. And I'd like to thank all of you. I recognize a lot of faces here, and we appreciate your business. Bill did a great job introducing us and hitting the high points. I think you could very easily have a career in sales with us. Because if you didn't have been up to a career, right? I mean that from the bottom of my heart. There's lots to say. You know, I would be very fortunate if I had the life like Bill and was able to have this talk at his age. So very proud of what the family did to kind of sow the seeds for what we're doing. And, you know, the amount of goodwill in that building and the feelings are so warm. I mean, all the many restaurants and stuff that I've worked in the past, I mean, nothing even comes close. So I think that speaks volumes as to why we're all here together tonight to talk about the history. So on behalf of my brothers and the community, we're very thankful for everybody for their support. And like Bill said, we are now at a super premium butterfat content, so that's now 14% butterfat. And we did get rid of the harmful dyes. That Facebook post went viral, and we had 5 million sets of eyes on it internationally and all that. So, wow, that was crazy. And then that kind of led us into this super premium mix, which is now no corn syrup. It's made with cane sugar. And like I said, a little bit more rich with the butterfat content. Yeah, so I don't know what else to say about it. I think, Bill, you did such a great job. Like I said, I truly do feel blessed to be a part of it and to carry the tradition. There's one thing I will say. I remember Bill one time had said to me, he said, Adam, you know, you used to wake up in the middle of the night, wonder, what's going up to dairy? And now I don't have to worry about that, you know. So now that's on me, I guess. Yeah. It's quite possibly the greatest thing, other than, you know, being a parent, that I ever done at Arha. So thank you all very much, and we look forward to seeing you up at the interior. Thank you.